What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I'm going to be bringing you my full review of the Sitivien ST118. As you know, I've changed my format here recently. What I have been doing is kind of unboxing the knife, carrying it, using it, handling it, getting and collecting my thoughts to share with everyone here, then coming back, putting it all back in the box so that you can see what all comes with the knife, and I can actually give you just the full review, the whole kit and caboodle all at once so that you don't have to worry about coming back and checking out the channel. So really quickly, let's run through the stats on this particular model from Sitivien. So the ST118 has a 3.3 inch D2 steel, 4.53 inch G10 handles, an overall length of 7.83 inches, which is that sweet spot that I do like for an EDC carry. I think it's a very nice size, friendly size, but I couldn't find the weight on this one, so we'll go ahead and check the weight out together as I try to destroy my poor little scale getting to this particular knife. So 3.5 ounces for a 3.3 inch blade. That's a little heavy for the blade to weight ratio in my opinion, but it's not awful. It's not awful. I'm going to go ahead and skip over my usual comparison knives, and I'm actually going to just give some reference to some knives that I have here close by from Sitivien, just for a frame of reference and because of how I plan to talk about this particular model. So first up, I'm going to bring out the ST122, which you can see here is a little bit longer of a knife. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and bring out the Sitivien ST124, which is their access lock. I forget what they call that. The S lock, the ST lock, I'm not quite sure. But as you can see here, this kind of falls more closely to the 124 than it actually does the ST122. Also, you get a little bit of a crossbar lock and a very unique blade shape. Now, from a utility perspective, this is probably not going to be as good as the other drop points because it does point up a little bit, but I just think this is overall aesthetically a more interesting looking knife. I'll put it that way. One more quick point of reference is going to be the ST126, which has dual means of deployment and is very closely comparable to the ST118. You can see here they're roughly about the same size overall in length. They have a very similar blade shape. The drop points on these are very competitive, very similar, I guess I should say, as far as how high up you would have to come for your utility cuts on these particular ones. Very similar blade length. I mean, they're just very comparable knives, but very, very different. And I'm going to leave this over here to talk about this a little bit more here in just a moment. Now, let me go ahead and go over this. This D2 is very thin, very slicey. Has a tall, flat grind with a swedge on it. It is D2 with very minimal branding, so I do appreciate that fact that they limited the branding and have toned it down a little bit. I'd like to see them try to take that Sitivien up here into the corner a little bit and just knock down that branding a little bit more. Has a very small pivot, but they do give you a nice little accent pivot collar to break up all of the black. One of the things I do like on here, I do like the ergonomic lines. Does feel pretty comfortable in hand, and you do feel pretty locked in with just a little bit of space left. You do get a reversible deep carry pocket clip, and this is the pocket clip that I do really like on these knives. If you're going to stamp it out, I prefer this because it lays flat, nestled into the hand, and you are less prone to feel that hot spot because your hand is resting on all of this, and then you just feel that ramp just a tiny bit. It's not awful at all. Access to the lock bar on this is a little uncomfortable. I think because it has the inset liners instead of sitting on the steel liners, that probably has something to do with it, but it is just a little bit uncomfortable. Now, the ramp for the detent is a very late engagement. That doesn't really affect anything as far as the knife is concerned. It's just a little bit late. It could be fall shut from the disengagement with the thumb, but you have to kind of put your hand like in a really far position, and it's just awkward and uncomfortable. It's not really intended to do that, so that is a knock for that. Blade did come centered. The D2 seems to be performing well as far as I can tell. I haven't had these for very long. For me, as a collector and an enthusiast, I really don't hang on to these. I like to do these budget reviews just to see what's out there and how competitive it is in the industry. I have found recently I'm a little burnt out on all the D2 offerings. I mean, that's a ton. There's a ton, not just from Sitivien, but there's a ton of D2 offerings out there from all kinds of knife makers, and they're all under $30. It's just really, really tight competition in this market. And all of it is D2. And D2 is fantastic for edge retention, but as far as toughness, it's not that great. And the corrosive resistance isn't all that great either. It's fine for a pocket knife if you don't live in an area that has a lot of moisture. If you're not around, like, rivers, lakes, oceans, bays, things of that nature, this should be fine for your day to day. I think this would make a great gift to someone that's trying to get into collecting or into pocket knives, or expose them to it. It'd be fine. And in all honesty, I probably would not say the 118 is the example to do that. I would actually probably say go ahead and just get a black G10 126. And the reason I say that is because the engagement for the lockball detent happens a lot earlier, so you can get them familiar with action and fall shut action. It does feel a little bit more comfortable because it does have the steel liners and the G10 scales sit on top of it. So it has a nice chunkier feel, but if they have the smaller hands, they may actually appreciate the slight thinness that you get with the 118. It does feel thinner because it does have the contouring going on. So you can see at the contoured part, it is just thinner. And then as it gets to the middle, it thickens up. So this ergonomically, it does feel a little bit nicer, but I just don't think this is as good as an example to give someone for a gift. In my opinion, I would go this route. And then you have the dual means of deployment with the thumb hole, so you're getting them a little bit more variety. And these both, again, are the same price, and they both are offering the same D2 and then the toned down aesthetics on this one. I think the 126 is the better example from Sitivien, I would say, in these instances. But if you really like the black with the orange pivot collar, then again, I would go back to the 122. The 122, I think, gives you more blade, a little bit longer, feels a little bit better in hand. It has the jimping on the G10 versus the smooth G10, so it feels a little bit more confident in hand. They both have the same pocket clips, so that feels good as well. But I just think that I like the 122 a little bit better. It does have that same problem with the later detent ball lock engagement, or disengagement, I guess I should say, but it's a little easier to overcome because I think it's a little bit further back. No, it's actually just because it's longer. So you can come down on here further and squeeze it in, but both of them are kind of uncomfortable, if I'm being completely honest. Interacting with the lock bar, just not quite that great. This one's really bad though. I don't know that I would recommend this out of all the ones in Sitivien's lineup. If you like the curvature and the smaller carry on this one, I totally get that and I understand that. But I really would challenge you to look at the Reich P801, something with 14C28N, because it does give you that stainlessness. And also, if you're getting someone into collecting knives, or you're trying to pique their interest, or you yourself are collecting budget knives, I would say that D2 is really hard to sharpen. It is a tough steel to sharpen, and you got to have a lot of patience, and you will have needed to work on sharpening just a little bit. 14C28N, a little bit easier to sharpen, and I know that I don't have as much time with Reich's 14C28N, but I know Sitivie's 14C28N, and I think you can get the brazen for like $50, so like $20 more than this, if I'm recalling correctly. The heat treat on it is really good, very easy to start getting into sharpening, maintaining your edge. You don't have to worry about corrosion resistance, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get turned off to knife collecting with D2 steel, and you certainly don't want to turn someone off that you might be giving a gift to turn them on to, knife collecting, or showing them, what the excitement is around these tools and pocket knives. So just kind of some thoughts on that. I had originally recorded this and I wasn't really happy with the recording, which is why you don't see me going through my typical usual comparison knives. I wanted to just show you some other Sitiviens out there that I really think are better. If you're giving a gift, you could really look at the Buck 110 that I usually have on this channel for around 30 bucks as well. I know it only has 420 steel, but again, it is corrosive resistant, super easy to maintain, super simplistic to use. If you're giving it to a gift to someone that you don't think that is going to really get into, you know, the pocket knife niche or into the community, but if you're trying to get him into it, I would probably say look at the Reich. You know, I know it has stainless steel handles and it's a little bit heavier, but I think that's okay for someone first getting into it because you're going to get them a quality steel that's, again, corrosive resistant, good edge retention, easy to maintain, good action, and it looks a little better. I think it has a nice look to it, and I know that's preference, but again, I just think it looks a little bit better. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. I probably would pass on this one. It's okay. It's just not my favorite out of their lineup, and maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe if I would have handled this one first, I would have felt differently, but I think I know it's really hard because I don't even think the 126 is my favorite. I honestly think the 102 and the 122 from them are my favorite. I feel like you get a lot more knife in hand. It is thin, feels very good. It doesn't have the contoured scales, which is why I think I like it. I also think the G10 looks a little bit better with the jimping on the spacer. Yeah, I don't know. I just think this one looks better. Let me know what you think in the comments, what your thoughts are. Do you have the 118? And have you compared it to some other Sitiviens? Have you handled the Reich? Let me know in the comments. I'd really be interested to see what you think. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor, leave a like. If you're not subscribed, think about subscribing. I'd love to have you follow along. And if you are already subscribed, thank you for all of your support. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have a fantastic week, guys. Until next time, peace.